So this project is called White Hat AI Hacking of Assessments. White Hat AI hacking is a popular method used in cybersecurity where an ethical hacker is actually tasked to break into a system to identify faults and vulnerabilities in the security of your system. Similarly, we are ethically AI hacking assessments in higher education by generating AI submissions and submitting them alongside student submissions for blind marking to test vulnerabilities in assessment designs to AI misuse. Overall, this project aims to evaluate vulnerabilities of current assessment practices to AI misuse and develop guidelines and co-design workshops for addressing these identified vulnerabilities. From our tests, we have identified and generated a 4-level AI vulnerability scale. So level 1 is visual inspection by the blind markers and AI detection by tools such as Turnitin detection. Level 2 is where we check whether the AI submissions have passed the assessment above 50%. Level 3 is where we comparatively check how close the AI marks are to the student marks. And the closer the marks are, the more vulnerable the assessment is. Level 4 is where we also get a spread of learning outcomes mapped against the rubric criteria, which we get from the pilot academics. And that's when we also look at whether the AI submissions learning outcomes are close to the students' learning outcomes. And the closer these two are, the more vulnerable the assessment is.
So the process looks like this. First, we need to generate AI submissions. That's currently done by humans. In the future, we anticipate that AIs will be powerful enough that we can just point them at the course and say, do assessment task 2. But at the moment, that's not really possible. We need a human to guide them along the way. We try to ensure the humans are in the mix as little as possible. Our eventual aim is to automate this completely. After that, our markers grade the student and the AI submissions blindly and randomly. The markers can also tick a box to say that they think that a submission was AI generated. After that, we take all the marks broken down by rubric level and we feed them into some magic R code. And the output of that is a report that has lots of graphs that we can use to identify the vulnerable and the resilient parts of the assessment rubric. Looking at those in detail, we can refine the assessment design to emphasize the parts that are assessing uniquely human qualities.
We also have some results from a pilot implementation, which consisted of a group technical report worth 30%, which was hacked and tested. So we had in total 105 submissions which were blind marked, 57 were student submissions, 48 were AI submissions, with multiple platforms such as Cloud, ChatGPT 4o, Copilot, and Gemini.
So the blind markers only misclassified 4 submissions as AI. Only 4 of the AI submissions were actually able to break through that level 1 vulnerability. Markers are actually pretty good at understanding which of the papers were submitted by AIs. But of those 4, they were all HDs. There's this interesting misconception that a poor quality submission is more likely to be AI, and conversely, people think that high quality submissions can't be generated by AI. As technology improves, that's a preconception we're going to have to let go of.
Now, looking at our level 2 results, only one AI submission failed the entire assessment. And looking at the statistics of these results, there was no statistical significant difference between Cloud and the students, which means statistically Cloud performed as well as a student in this experiment. Looking at our level 3 results, we also looked at the correlation between the rubric criteria for AI and student submissions, and we compared to gain some insights about this. From the results, we see that the correlation between the limitations and recommendations was 0.741 for AI and 0.497 for student submissions, which means the AI was able to make better connections between the limitations and recommendations, as it is a text-based model. And interestingly, we also looked at the correlation between the presentations and the methods, results, and limits, which was relatively low for the AI submissions and relatively high for the student submissions. After looking at the submissions, we can conclude that the students were able to make better graphs, visual representations of the data, whereas the AI just created simple tables. In terms of our level 4 results, the pilot academics were asked to provide percentage weighting of their rubric criterions against the learning outcomes. And this gave us a distribution of learning outcomes achieved for this assessment by students and AI. And we then did a comparative analysis and we found that the learning outcomes of the AI submissions were all above 50%. And that's indicating high vulnerability within this assessment.
One of the interesting things we learned in this process was that even things that AI traditionally struggles with, like graphs, can be worked around pretty simply. The AI would actually provide Python code to create a graph in a situation where it couldn't naturally drop one in line. So you might want to consider things that AI can do and AI can't do, you need to consider the fact that those are going to change over time. So there's a few things that we want our educators to know. Right now, even if your course is not involved in this project, it's worth having a go at just feeding your assessments into AI and seeing what comes out. You might be really surprised at how good it is answering the questions. You might find there are things in there that aren't really assessing anything you're teaching your students. If you find the AI can do it perfectly without having taken anything from your course, well, that's probably not actually really assessing what you think it is. You'll get a feel also for what a completely generated AI submission will look like, which can really help you find those kind of things, find that AI misuse in your own student submissions. Secondly, this is an ongoing process. As I've said, AI is evolving rapidly. Something that's resilient in 2024 might be vulnerable in 2025.
And although we can keep improving assessment security, it also has complications where you could have a tendency of making your assessments harder and harder. A better approach would be to measure the process and not the product. When you focus on the process, you incorporate more opportunities for feedback, and it also gives us opportunities to improve assurance of learning, making sure that the students are gaining those opportunities to display student learning outcomes throughout the course.